The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps.
But I think that, but I can't get past the core fact about Walz, which is he presided over, allowed the biggest city in the state to get burned down.
And seemed to not only allow it, but kind of support it, you know?
Did you see the video of his wife saying, I kept the windows open so I could smell the burning rubber from the riots?
I did not see that.
Wow. The wife whose hand he shook.
Oh my God. By the way, I mean, I know it's picking on a little thing, but who the hell shakes their wife's hand?
What does it say about a man when he greets his wife of 30 years with a stiff, formal handshake on a public stage? For Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, that painfully awkward moment blew up online and quickly started to feel like a sign of something bigger. On the surface, he sells the whole Minnesota nice image, like it's his entire personality. His political brand is built on being safe, calm, and almost too polite to ever challenge anyone, projecting a steady, sleepy kind of confidence. But when voices like Gutfeld and Tucker Carlson started pulling at the seams, they revealed a very different picture. Not a strong leader firmly in control, but a man presiding over a slow-motion mess while still flashing that empty, practiced smile at the camera. That handshake wasn't just a harmless slip. It felt like an accidental confession, hinting at an unsettling gap between the public act and the real person underneath. In a world where politicians hug their spouses and perform warmth for the cameras, Walz came off as cold. That stiff official gesture felt less like a quirky habit and more like a glitch in the performance.
Politico lingers on candidates' fingers and defend Walz's wide eyes as they claim beards are for bad guys. Tyler, speaking of beards, and I mean the one on your face, not the one that you hang out with.
Let me just say that Walz and every other governor who did anything like that is a monster, and I think on some level he will be punished for it. But no, I admire what you did enough that I hope I'd be man enough to do it myself. I took minor risks during COVID by pointing out things that seemed true to me, but I didn't do anything that heroic. I think it's absolutely essential. Clearly, we're moving toward an authoritarian state. I think we've already arrived. I think your life is a testament to that.
Wait, you lost because you weren't woke enough? That's like telling Joy Behar she's not eating enough Doritos. That's like Jasmine Crockett saying, I gotta black this up. That's like Bud Light saying, hey, you know what? We could use more Dylan Mulvaney.
That friendly mask didn't just crack in 2020. It looked like it completely shattered when Minneapolis was swallowed by fire during the riots. Governor Tim Walz faced a true make-or-break moment, and by almost any measure, it turned into a brutal failure. For days, the city burned. The 3rd Precinct police station was abandoned as crowds poured in, and entire blocks collapsed into ash and wreckage. The footage felt unreal, yet Walz's response came off as oddly hands-off and painfully slow. Gutfeld argued it went beyond simple incompetence, suggesting Walz did more than just allow the destruction. He implied Walz almost supported it, as if he quietly approved of what was happening. That's a stunning accusation, and it paints a picture of a governor who treated the chaos not as a tragedy, but as some kind of rough, righteous progress. That impression grew darker after a video surfaced of Walz's wife, Gwen, who allegedly said she kept her windows open to smell the burning rubber from the riots. Whether it was a deeply tone-deaf joke or a real feeling, the moment stuck. Two powerful people, safe at home, seeming detached from the fear and destruction tearing through the state's largest city. And the fallout didn't end when the flames went out. Afterward, Minneapolis reportedly lost nearly 40% of its police force, as officers left a city where they felt attacked instead of supported by leadership. To critics, it wasn't just a riot. It was the beginning of public safety coming apart under a governor who appeared more focused on progressive approval than on protecting the people right in front of him.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear any. But I guess questioning elections is okay now. But the best moment came when Walz forgot who he is.
Who is Tim Walz exactly?
It started sort of with picking up on just these little lies he would tell. He never was a command sergeant major, despite the fact him, saying that he was. He never attained this rank in the military. Instead, he abandoned his troops and they were deployed to Iraq without him, and he ran for Congress. So I've always felt as a reporter, if someone lies about little things, they're lying about big things.
That's a principle that stands the test of time.
And Minnesota has become, the home of this defund the police movement. It was on the ballot. Minneapolis did not vote to defund the police, but I would say in every way, shape, or form, they defunded the police. You have the Minneapolis Police Department that's lost about 40% of their cops since George Floyd. But instead of being
Minneapolis lost 40% of its cops in 5 years?
Nearly half, yeah.
While Minneapolis was still smoldering, it felt like a second fire was being lit, this time under the state's economy during Governor Tim Walz's pandemic leadership. A harsh, punishing new reality set in. Critics argued he wasn't governing like a steady hand at all, but more like what Greg Gutfeld described as a mob boss, collecting debts and making examples out of people. Small businesses were ordered to shut down with cold, no-nonsense force. One of the most gut-wrenching stories, supporters say, involved a law-abiding grandmother who opened her small business as a peaceful protest and ended up sentenced to jail time. Her crime was trying to earn a living, and her punishment was the full weight of the state. Meanwhile, she was treated like a dangerous criminal while massive corporate big-box stores stayed open as if nothing was wrong. It felt like the virus was supposedly lurking in every family shop and diner, but somehow skipping the biggest chains entirely. Churches were shut down, yet liquor stores were labeled essential, a double standard critics called staggering. To them, this didn't look like leadership guided by science. It looked like leadership driven by power and political favoritism. Tucker Carlson framed it as a kind of creepy, technocratic tyranny, where citizens were told what to think, what to fear, and when they were allowed to step outside. In that view, it was less about public health and more about public control, like a government treating grown adults like toddlers who had to ask permission to live, delivered with the smug certainty of someone who confused wrecking livelihoods with saving lives.
So I'm the law-abiding grandma that was sentenced to 90 days in jail for opening my business during the shutdowns as a peaceful protest when Minnesota Governor Tim Walz unconstitutionally and illegally shut our businesses down. So my question is, if you were in my situation, would you have done the same thing? Or what would you have done?
Well, I flatter myself by imagining I would have done the same thing, because I think what you did is honorable and necessary.
Dude, you're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly. Because Walz saying old white men suck isn't a political stance, it's his confession. Walz calling people old and white is like Maxine Waters making fun of someone for shopping at Wigs R Us.
But the doubts about Tim Walz's leadership don't stop with his time as governor. Critics say they reach all the way back to the foundation of his public image, to what they call a lie that helped build his career. For years, Walz was introduced as a command sergeant major, one of the highest and most respected enlisted ranks in the military. That title carries weight. It signals toughness, leadership, and the kind of trust soldiers don't give easily. It became a core part of his brand, a seasoned leader who understood duty and sacrifice. The problem, critics argue, is that the story doesn't line up with the rank he was presented as having. Walz served 24 years in the National Guard, but critics point to military records and reporting that question whether he ever actually reached the rank of command sergeant major. In their view, this wasn't a harmless mistake. It was presented as a solid fact, and they call it a fabrication. The questions only get sharper from there. Critics also argue that Walz left his unit to run for Congress right before it deployed to Iraq. To them, that decision looked like personal ambition winning out over staying with his troops when it mattered most. As Tucker Carlson framed it, this wasn't just a small exaggeration on a resume, it pointed to something bigger. The warning in that critique is simple. If someone is willing to bend the truth about the basic building blocks of his own story, why should anyone trust him on the big ones? In this telling, the rank claim wasn't just one wrong detail. It was seen as a symptom of something deeper. a willingness to borrow an identity he didn't fully earn because it played well in politics.
5 years ago this summer, George Floyd, a convicted felon, OD'd on fentanyl outside a convenience store in Minneapolis, and the country changed forever. 5 years later, Tim Walz is still the governor. Keith Ellison is still the attorney general. The cops who were falsely convicted of murdering George Floyd are mostly still in prison. But what happened in Minneapolis itself? Well, it's been wrecked. And no one has said a word about it. But I just wonder about this story in particular. Did he have contact with Walz? Do we know that Walz said, I met this guy ever?
Well, this is what's interesting. We know that he served on a board appointed by Walz. However, I'll say that...
what kind of board was it?
It was a workforce development board.
The fallout from Walz's ideology-driven leadership, critics argue, hit hardest where it hurts most, the kids. While he and his administration pushed equity as the top priority, they say Minnesota classrooms slipped into a different kind of crisis. Under his watch, reading and math scores reportedly fell sharply, and the focus seemed to move away from academic excellence toward ideology, where feelings mattered more than facts. Greg Gutfeld mocked this approach by joking that under Walz, 2 + 2 = whatever won't hurt anyone's feelings. It's a funny line on the surface, but it points to a serious accusation. Critics say the education system was turned into a testing ground for progressive social experiments, and students were the ones paying the price. As one observer put it, it was ideological conditioning served lukewarm, with a side of mediocrity. They argue this decline wasn't an accident. It was the predictable result of policies aimed at equal outcomes by lowering standards for everyone. In that view, the message was clear. Avoid the discomfort of failure at all costs, even if it means fewer students ever achieve real success. And while Walz's public policies sparked outrage, critics also point to a personal choice they say feels even more unsettling. It sounds so strange it could be dismissed as a smear, but they present it as fact. Walz and his wife were married on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. Out of all 365 days, they allegedly chose a date tied to the haunting image of a lone protester standing in front of a tank, a lasting symbol of a government crushing its own people with brute force. So the question lingers. Why that day? Simple ignorance, dark humor, or something more troubling, like a quiet admiration for raw state power? And critics say it doesn't stop there. They claim the couple then went to China for their honeymoon. In that framing, they chose a date linked to Chinese government brutality and then traveled to the country run by that same government to celebrate their marriage. An irony so heavy it feels suffocating, and a level of judgment they describe as shockingly poor.
Are people misreading Tim's odd greeting? The man of the hour, Tim Walz, brings us our second video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it.
His wedding anniversary, they were married 5 years after Tiananmen Square, and he picked that date because it was a date that they would remember, he and his wife.
What?
Who does that?
Tiananmen Square?
Correct.
The tank crushing the lone protester? That's
their wedding anniversary. And they went to China for their honeymoon.
Come on. You're sure he picked the anniversary?
They've talked about this
in
interviews. Yeah, this is in newspapers.
But Tiananmen Square was a massacre of peaceful protesters.
I know.
Do you think they picked it to in the memory of those brave souls who died opposing the machine?
They haven't said that.
Oh my God!
This slow-motion train wreck of a governorship became the perfect target for a two-man wrecking crew, and each one attacked it in a very different way. Greg Gutfeld brought the comedy, while Tucker Carlson delivered the cold, clinical breakdown. Gutfeld played the comedic assassin, firing off rapid punchlines and sharp sarcasm to show just how ridiculous the whole thing looked. He didn't just criticize Walz. He seemed to genuinely enjoy ripping Walz's story apart. Gutfeld zeroed in on Walz's awkward attempts to connect with voters, including the moment Walz called himself a huge disappointment as an old white guy. Gutfeld joked that it was the first thing Walz had gotten completely right. His comparisons landed hard too, like when he mocked Walz's woke posturing by comparing it to telling Joy Behar she isn't eating enough Doritos. Then Tucker Carlson stepped in as the calm, methodical narrator of political decay. never needing to raise his voice to make the point sting. With the precision of a coroner, Carlson picked through Walz's record piece by piece. He didn't paint Walz as some evil mastermind. Instead, he framed him as something more ordinary and, in Carlson's telling, more dangerous. A hall monitor with a pension. In that view, Walz becomes the model of the soft authoritarian, the smiling bureaucrat who dutifully follows a failing elite consensus, all while signing executive orders that make life harder for the very people he claims to be protecting.
One of them, Politico says, is like Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes. That humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that?
Sorry. That was
Beyond the social issues, critics argue Walz's leadership pushed Minnesota's economy right up to the edge of a cliff. In their view, his administration became a textbook example of how to make a state feel hostile to growth. Taxes climbed fast, regulations stacked up, and policies that seemed to punish innovation sent businesses running like they smelt smoke. To critics, his hardline commitment to a green energy agenda said the most about his leadership style. All symbolism, no stability. They argue he backed expensive, unreliable green plans that put strain on the power grid faster than he would cave at a teachers' union meeting. He talked nonstop about sustainability while governing in ways they call completely unsustainable. In that telling, it was yet another case of chasing a progressive daydream instead of dealing with the everyday needs of Minnesotans, who were left facing higher costs and a less reliable system. It looked like trying to build a perfect future on a shaky pile of bad ideas. And when the cracks started to show, critics say he simply pointed the finger somewhere else. By the end, this blunt roast of Tim Walz is framed as more than just a political attack. It's presented as a revealing case study in modern leadership failure. Gutfeld brought the comedy club punches. Carlson delivered the courtroom-style teardown. And Walz, bless his heart, provided endless material. In this critique, he represents a new kind of leader, one who wraps incompetence in a folksy smile and packages harmful policies in the soft language of compassion and science. And when the noise finally fades, the argument goes, he won't be remembered as the leader who guided Minnesota through hard times. Instead, thanks to the commentators who publicly hammered him, he'll be remembered as the guy who brought a kazoo to his own roast and still got roasted for it.